this is listening, so maybe I'll just hold it. It's okay.
Sure, yeah. That's fine. Sure.
Well, everyone, thank you for coming out for this press conference. All of the mayoral candidates agree that Minneapolis needs more jobs and more affordable housing. I do respect my opponents, but they all think that the way to achieve those goals is by convening yet another Blue Ribbon Commission or starting yet another government program to achieve those worthy goals of more jobs and more housing. As you know, I'm not coming from a background in government. I'm coming from the private sector. My colleagues and I built a wind turbine maintenance company with 120 employees nationwide. And so with that perspective, I'm the one candidate clearly saying that to achieve more jobs, to achieve more affordable housing, we need to streamline our process of business licensing, and we need to streamline our process of building permits. It's by getting City Hall out of the way of the private sector that we can achieve our worthy goals of more jobs and more affordable housing. So let me address each of those topics in turn. First, I'll cover business licensing, and then I'll cover building permits. Business licensing. Right now in Minneapolis, if you want to start a business, odds are you have to get a license to do so. Minneapolis has 160 categories of business license. I'll say that again to be a little more precise. Minneapolis has 160 types of business license. And if you want to start a business, it's your obligation to figure out whether you slot into one of those types and to get a license. So for example, right now in Minneapolis, if you want to have a jukebox, you have to have a license to have a jukebox. That to me is silly. There's no reason that someone should have to have a license to put a jukebox in their establishment and have people put nickels into it to hear a song. Now, to be clear, if you have a bar license, you do not also have to have a jukebox license. So some people are exempt from this requirement. But by and large, if you want a jukebox, you have to have a license. There are other examples of things in Minneapolis for which Minneapolis requires licenses that I think are unnecessary. If you want to have a dancing school, you have to have a license. And a dancing school could be something as simple as have some people in your living room, teach them how to square dance, charge them a little bit of money for it. You have to have a license for that. To have a bowling alley, you have to have a license. That's silly. It gets in the way of people engaging in economic activity and creating jobs. So when I'm mayor, City Hall will dramatically reduce the number of types of activity for which you need a license. If you want to engage in an activity that actually threatens to harm residents of the city, then you need a license for that. So here's some examples. If you want to transport hazardous waste, if you want to run a funeral home, if you want to store fireworks, then yes, you'll need a license. But for the vast majority of activities, you don't need a license. Don't do it. Hire people. Engage in commerce. Another key problem with licenses is that right now Minneapolis has duplicative licenses for the state. If you are a plumber, you have to get a state plumbing license. But guess what? Then you also have to get a city plumbing license. Now the city will tell you that thing is called a competency card. And then, no, it's not a license. If it walks like a license and talks like a license, it's a license. It takes time and money and headache to get it. It's a license. It's duplicative. It's unnecessary. And when I'm there, you won't have to get it. Let me make sure we're all clear on what's at stake here. Folks may know that as a region, we have a tremendously low unemployment rate. The latest data show that it's 4.2% as a region, Minneapolis-St. Paul. And that's in fact the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country for our region. That's fantastic. But that headline statistic masks some real disparities between neighborhoods. There are census tracts in Minneapolis with unemployment of 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, even 20%. Folks probably know a census tract is a homogeneous district of a few thousand people. You can go to city-data.com, maybe .org, but it's one of the two, city-data, to check my stats here. There are census tracts in North Minneapolis and near South Minneapolis with unemployment between 15 and 20%. It's unacceptable. And I know everybody agrees it's unacceptable. But trying the same old approaches of more programs and more blue ribbon commissions isn't going to get the job done. I know from my experience building my wind turbine maintenance company with my colleagues, you know, I always take pains to emphasize it's a team effort. I know that business expands into places where the level of taxation and regulation is predictable and reasonable. And right now in Minneapolis, it's not either of those things. And so we shouldn't be surprised that we have too many unemployed people in our city, people who are hungering for a job. We need to get City Hall out of the way. Let me turn then to permits, building permits. Right now, for the vast majority of things you'd want to do to your own home, which build a commercial establishment, you have to come to this building, the Public Service Center, and get a permit. I want to give credit where it's due. The city has done a little bit of work to tinker around the margins to streamline the process. The development review process is better and more efficient than it was a few years ago. But that's not saying a whole lot, because it used to be really bad and now it's just bad. A few things to note regarding building permits. And before I share the few things I've changed, let me, as I did with jobs, let me make sure everybody's aware of what the stakes are when it comes to housing and it comes to building. We need more affordable housing in our city. The vacancy rate for rental housing, depending on what statistic you look at, is at 3% or 4%. Rents have gone up and up and up over the past few years. Anecdotally, I hear it all the time on the campaign trail. I just can't find a place to live. I can find a studio apartment, but my studio apartment won't let me move in with my kids, is what folks I meet on the trail say. Housing developers, builders, are willing to run the gauntlet of permitting to build higher-end housing. We've all seen the explosive growth in rental properties in the North Loop, along the Midtown Greenway in Uptown, and around Dinkytown. That's fantastic. That's great. Bravo. Thanks to everybody involved.